put down your baby and pick up a beer or maybe a glass of wine. Because Dad Jokes is here. Brandon, normally I'm a beer guy, but tonight I got a glass of red wine with me. But I see you're drinking beer over there. What do you got over there?
Oh, real sophisticated. I'm sipping on a little hop slam. And to tell you the truth, I don't know if this says anything about me. I happen to have one can in my office, and I sent you the invite to start recording, and I was like, I don't have anything in here to drink if my throat starts hurting, which it does. Not hurting, but like halfway through the episode, and I don't want to be coughing, so it was there, so I cracked it open. I had no plans on drinking a beer during this episode.
Well, I actually was kind of the same. I got done watching a basketball game, and then I knew we were going to record, and I'm like, man, I don't have anything. I should grab some water. And then we had a bottle of red wine open from last night where just Macy and I both had just a small amount. I'm like, you know what? I'll have another glass of that red wine. I'm a beer guy, like I said, but I do like to dabble into some wine from time to time. I like some reds, some cabs, if you will. So that's what we're drinking right now is a cab, So, and then we might even go out this week, Brandon, and have some wine together. Sounds like we're going to a place perhaps that is famous for wine.
Well, we definitely will be eating together. I don't know about drinking wine together because I have not gotten bitten by that bug.
No, you haven't.
College for me was when, like, beer is an acquired taste. When I first, quote unquote, started drinking beer, I probably can't admit when that was on this podcast, but when that happened, I hated it. But it was like what was available and cheap, and you don't have any money, so you just you kind of drink what's there. So it becomes an acquired taste. Wine. Now that I got a little bit of money in my pocket, if you will, I don't have time to develop an acquired taste. I drink what I like, and I have not found a wine that I really like, and I'm not drinking enough of it to.
Yeah, it's like anything else. It's acquired, and I'm definitely more of a beer guy too. But I will tell you that one, I've always liked the idea of wine just because you can keep it and save it, and it's kind of cool to collect. People that got like a bunch of bottles of wine at their house, I always thought that was cool.
I'm rolling my eyes right now.
I don't know why. It's not me, but that's what I always thought was cool. But we actually went on a trip to Napa and into San Francisco when we got engaged, and that kind of changed a few things because we went to some really good wineries out there. So we got a couple of good bottles, but we probably maybe have, I don't know, a bottle of wine every other month. So it's not very common, but every once in a while, I like to crack one. So, or uncork one, if you will. But enough about wine.
I see what you did there.
Enough about wine, enough about beer. We're going to get into today, Brandon, some fun stuff. We're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, and that is milestones. What are the milestones for your baby's first year of life? Kind of what is the idea behind milestones? And should you really be that concerned if your baby's hitting them one way or another? So we'll get into all that. But as always, Brandon, we're going to lead off with a dad joke. Are you ready for one?
I'm waiting with bated breath, Jerry.
Brandon, I just got one question for you. How do you steal a coat?
How do you steal a coat? You jack it.
You jack it. Absolutely.
Yes!
That is absolutely correct.
Got one.
You did. So I don't know if that's good or bad because, you're able to guess it, but
it made me feel way better about your joke. I'll tell you that much.
It.
Yeah, I like it now.
That was an audible. I actually had a different joke picked out, and I saw that while scrolling through my phone probably 20 minutes ago, and I was like, I think that's funny. So that's where we went with. It stuck in my head. So I'm glad you got that. I'll have to get one now, too, because I don't think I've guessed one of yours yet.
I think mine is pretty easy today, to tell you the truth, if you think about it. So
okay,
we'll see at the end of the episode.
But before we get into today's episode or your dad joke, what's been going on this week with Bryce and the Bankses?
This week was pretty uneventful, to tell you the truth, which when you have a kid is a pretty decent week to take. I was about to say to tell you the truth again. I guess I did. So Bryce is turning 6 months in a couple of days. We had a question so he has his 6-month appointment at the end of this week that we'll be going to and getting kind of all the measurements, making sure he's growing how he should. But we kind of got a sneak peek at the weight because earlier this week we had to take him to the doctor. He had a rash that we were unsure about. So took him in just to make sure everything was okay, and it was. But he's 17 pounds, 6 ounces right now. So he's a little tank.
Yeah, he is.
And so I've been using him in the mornings to get my bicep curls in. Yeah, I see you anticipated what I was saying. I see you making the motion now. So, I mean, things have been really good. He's sleeping. It's taking a little bit of a regression. He's still sleeping in stretches that if you would have told me I was going to get that early on in his life, I'd have said all day, every day, I'll take it. So I can't really complain too much. But he was sleeping straight through the night almost. It does seem like he's waking up every 4 hours to feed again, instead of sleeping like 6-7 hours at one time. But he's also in the middle of a leap. So
aren't they always?
I'm realizing that we need to come out with an app that just tells parents that, hey, in approximately a day and a half, something is going to be going on with your kid that it's probably because they're growing. And these are the milestones you should look forward to. They're all the same and generic. And then
are they crying more?
Yeah,
are they more tired?
Exactly. And they'll be on this. They'll be in this leap for the next 3 weeks, and then you'll get 2 days of them not being in the leap, and then they're gonna hop into another one.
What we need is the app that says when they're not in the leap, because that's what parents want to know. Hey, your baby might be a normal little human today.
But really, what that turns into, and I'm sure there's a bunch of science that goes into it and research, but it basically turns into a coping mechanism, because you look at it and you're like, oh, okay, this is supposed to be happening right now, which at the price they're charging per app and how many downloads they've gotten, a lot of people have they've made a lot of money off a lot of people. So I'm I am skeptical. I'm growing more and more skeptical about that app, because I feel like every time I look at it, we're in the middle of a leap. So, but there could be something to be said about that. Maybe I'm looking at it more often when he's displaying behavior that I can't really, I don't know, wrap my mind around. But that was our week, really. Got to hang out with them the last couple of days, and it's been fun.
Nice.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's one more thing. I got really excited there. After we stopped our podcast, or stopped recording last week, we did give Bryce food for the first time.
Oh.
I didn't mention that last episode. So Bryce was pushing peas last week. For anybody who gets that reference, send me a direct message on our Instagram page. But Bryce had peas. That was his first food for the first time. He really, the main point of it was to get him to figure out how to get the spoon to his mouth, work with different textures, things like that. So today we're going to go with sweet potatoes when we hang up this call, and
what do you think of the peas?
That goes. What do you think of peas? Because I'm pretty sure that's what he thought of peas. Exactly. He still ate them. Like he was interested in it, but it was no real reaction. It was kind of like, I would say, like, who really likes peas?
Yeah. No.
That's what his face said the whole time.
Nice. I like it. Well, we had probably the opposite, maybe, that sounds like that you guys had. We had a really eventful week. Just a lot going on. The biggest thing was we had our 3-month appointment that we were kind of going to see how Peyton's weight was going, because if you remember, if you didn't listen to the podcast, at 2 months she was really, really light, kind of second, third percentile for weight, and they were a little bit concerned about that. So we started giving her more bottles, trying to track how much she was eating and see if we can get that weight up. So we had that 3-month appointment, because now Peyton is 3 months, which is also a big thing. The appointment went fairly well. She's at 10 pounds, 2 ounces now. So she's gained about 1.5 pounds in the last month, which is solid. She's still in about the third percentile for weight, but she's following that arc. So she didn't plateau, which is what they don't want to see. She followed the arc, so it's actually a pretty good thing. Her height's like 12th percentile, head's like 35th. So those are more, on the normal side. So overall, pretty good. The doctor said basically continue a lot of the things that we've already been doing. The one big difference is she's been spitting up a lot more lately. A lot of reflux. We've tried different bottles. We've tried different techniques. And a lot. Like, she'll spit up like 5 or 6 times after eating in large amounts. So one thing they recommended that we do is that we put some rice cereal in her bottles, about a teaspoon, mix it in there, see if you can thicken that breast milk up, which can help them not spit up as much. So we just started doing that, Brandon, so I'll let you know if that kind of worked or doesn't work. But that's kind of exciting, or something different that we haven't done. Other than that, Macy went back to work on days, so not nights, she's days now, which means that a lot of times when I'm coming home from work, I'm the one who gets Peyton before she comes home. And I had kind of an interesting experience this week, Brandon. One of the days I came home from work, I got her from my in-laws, and I put her in her chair because I was going to take a quick shower. She was calm as could be, just sat there. Then I got out of the shower, changed, grabbed her, and we sat down, and she was the most well-behaved, calm baby for about 3 hours, to the point where I was legitimately worried. Like, I was seriously concerned. It sounds bad, but she's never that way. Even when she's happy or content, she's very energetic. She's kicking, she's grabbing, she's trying to move, and she wasn't. She was just calm, and she wasn't sleeping. She was just kind of sitting there, and it was worrying me that something was wrong with her. Then a little bit later in night, once Macy came home, she started acting a little bit more normal. But what was funny is the next day, I came home, or it was actually yesterday. It was Saturday, so I came home from work, and I'll tell you what, this was one of the worst days she ever had. She was super cranky, could not be happy ever, just was miserable pretty much the whole entire night. So she went from being an angel child on Friday to Saturday being a little demon child. But the good news is she was acting up until about midnight, which is normal. But then she slept from midnight till about 6:30 this morning. So
wow,
great sleep there. That. We'll take that. And then today we went on a little lunch date, which I was nervous about. But she was sleeping for the first half, and the second half she kind of sat in Macy's lap and behaved. So that was really nice as well. So that was kind of exciting. And then you mentioned leaps. We're about to enter that dreaded leap that's about 20 weeks long. Oh. I don't know if you remember that one, Brandon, but we're 2 days away from entering the longest leap, and what they say is one of the most difficult ones often. So that should be super fun, but that's 2 days from now, apparently. So we'll go from there. But yeah, an eventful week, kind of a little bit going on. I can hear her upstairs right now screaming for the last about 10 minutes. So I think she's still got some of that crankiness from yesterday. So we'll see how the rest of today goes. What
I'm wondering for you guys is, are you really going to notice a huge difference in when you head into that leap because of her being colicky in the first place? So maybe you notice it less, and around 4 months it's supposed to get better for you. So I'll tell you one thing. She came to visit you at work on Saturday, and I got to hang out with her. I think you were busy with the couple salespeople, so right when they came in, I got to hang out with her for about 10 minutes, and she was chill. And I don't know if it's maybe that I just have a calming voice and calming effect. I got a couple smiles out of her. I'm joking, but it was great to get Peyton smiling at me. It was fun.
Yeah, she's smiling a lot more. And she has this funny laugh because she can't like do like a belly laugh yet, but she does like this laugh where she's like, it's funny. So she does that a lot now, especially in the morning. But yeah, like I said, it's been interesting. And I think as far as the leap goes, during the day, it might be tough to notice, but she actually, after midnight, tends to sleep pretty well. To the morning, she might wake up once, but usually does pretty well. So when things are bad, that's when we tend to notice it, is the middle of the night. So hopefully that's not the case, but that's what I'm a little bit worried about, is that she wakes up more frequently and then it's harder to get to bed in the middle of the night. So hopefully that's not the case, but it might be.
We'll cross our fingers. You'll be all right.
I hope so. So Brandon, you said to me before we started today, we have a segment on the show that we do sometimes for the folks at home that we call Things Our Wives Said to Us This Week. But today, we're not going to do things our wife said. We're going to do things we said, or in this case, you said. So what did you say this week that you think the folks at home should hear?
So I was explicitly told by my wife that I needed to mention this today. So this is a break off from things my wife said, because my wife said you need to tell your podcast people this today. Bryce pooped, which is how half of my stories on this podcast started. And so it's a pretty substantial bodily function, and I'm changing his diaper, and she's telling me like some story. I don't even know what she was saying. And I looked over at her and said, I need you to stop talking to me right now. I have to focus on changing this diaper. I can't hear anything you're saying. So she looks at me and says, you need to tell that to your podcast people. So we did that. So I could not legitimately, it was, I don't know, dads out there, probably not moms out there, but moms out there from not I want to say frustration, but I'm looking at like a task in front of me, and I need to finish this task, and I can't. These outside distractions, I can't hear them. I can't get with it. So I had to say, hey, let's pause this conversation because I can only focus on this right now. I feel like I'm gonna mess something up.
Brandon, you know what that reminds me of? You ever drive somewhere that you don't know where you're going? It's like late at night, and someone's talking to you, the radio's on, and you're like, be quiet. I need to know where I'm going. Mm-hmm. Like, it's going to help you know where you're going if there's no talking or the radio's
or if there's a
down.
bunch of traffic in an unfamiliar area.
Yeah. So that's what it reminds me of, because sometimes that does happen. Like, I did one today that was kind of a blowout, and it was kind of the same thing. I was like, I just need to focus on changing the diaper. I don't know what else is going on, but that's just my sole focus. And the good news, too, here in this house, talking about poop, Brandon, is we're through the Huggies diapers. So now we're back on Team Pampers, and I'm a lot happier because I'll tell you what, the first Pampers diaper I changed and the tab stayed open, I was so happy because they don't fold in, and it's been great since, you know.
First world problems.
Exactly. So definitely, it was funny because early on I could not figure out why people cared about what diaper. I'm like, they're all the same. They all do. No. And then you quickly learn. So still Team Pampers on that front, although she did blow out of one today, so clearly not perfect, but it beats what we were experiencing with Huggies. We've had
limited blowouts with Huggies.
Oh, that's good. So, Brandon, I don't have a thing your wife said, but I do have a baby fact. So this is a fact that I looked up this week because Peyton, I've noticed, is if she's on my lap or my wife's lap and we're hanging out and the TV's on, she's fascinated by the television. Loves television, you know. And I'm like, I've always heard my whole life, they're not supposed to let babies watch TV. And we don't try to. She just happens to look at it. Like, even if she's on her mat or in her swing, she tends to look towards the television. So then finally I was like, you know, I'm going to look this up. Is it really bad for babies to see TV? And actually, Brandon, it is recommended to not let children watch television until they're 18 months or older because they say that it can slow down their development and it can prohibit certain learning and actually slow down. One of the bigger things is speech. It can mess up their speech. So now I'm really self-conscious anytime she's around the television, but I thought that was interesting. I don't know if Bryce is fascinated by TV like Peyton is, but she is fascinated by that. Or phones too. She likes to look at phones too.
Both. And really the thing there is, like, let's just throw an example out there. Coco Melon is like a super popular show. Mm-hmm. But a lot of studies have shown it is something that fascinates your kid, but basically if you have a show or whatever you're watching in which the picture is constantly changing, like in that case it's on average like every 3 seconds there's a different frame or different picture showing, that's something that actually isn't good for your child's development to an even greater extent. So yes, Bryce is fascinated by the TV. I think it's very difficult to continue to try to live your life without the TV ever being on. So I think, kind of like you, it's as he starts to like watch TV or what have you, shifting his body, making sure you're distracting him. But the TV oftentimes is on in the background, but it is being conscious of what you're watching. And is he ever like really just sitting there watching TV? That's rare. But because I had the same apprehensions you do now. I can't say that word. Apprehensions. That you do. Yeah, that you do now. And so that's something that we kind of focus on. But I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said the kid hasn't been watching TV before. But it is something that you kind of got to watch out for.
For sure. And 18 months is a long time, too. Like, I was surprised it was that long. Time. You know, I was thinking maybe 6 months or something, but 18 months is a long time.
They have TV shows geared towards, like, babies.
They do, 1,000%.
They have, like, a baby channel.
Yep.
So it is interesting, though, to see how many shows, because my wife might have told me, or I might have read it somewhere, that stat about Coco Melon, so I looked it up. And it's amazing how many different shows that are geared towards kids have those fast-moving, fast-moving shows, or where the screen's changing every few seconds, because that is the number one thing that isn't recommended. It'll keep your child's attention, which most of the time that's how parents will judge whether or not their kid likes the show, because their kid's quiet for 35 minutes. But it's just something to think about.
For sure. And then one other thing, too, I know we mentioned this in a previous episode, but I did order the Advent bottle colic bottle specifically for colicky babies, which is actually very similar to Dr. Brown's. It has a separate piece inside of it. We used that for the first time yesterday. Peyton did really well with it. She does really well with a lot of bottles as far as taking them. But it was afterwards, their spit up seemed to be a little bit less. It's only one, but it's something to keep in mind, Brandon. I know you guys are team Dr. Brown's. This bottle might be a substitute as well. I feel like the inner piece is a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to clean, and the bottle itself are a little bit thicker, which sometimes are easier to clean as well. So if you guys wanted to see what a different bottle was, that might be a way to go. It's very highly rated, just like Dr. Brown's are. It's just a different option. Also on Amazon, I think it was $7 for one. So I thought we'd try it, and it worked.
One thing you guys will learn about Jerry is that if he has multiple people in his life that say something is good or that it works, then he's going to find time to figure out what is the best alternative so that he can say that he's not doing the same thing that they're doing. So I'm sure the Advent bottles are great. I absolutely am. And guess what? They're going to be, because those are the bottles that he's going to use going forward.
Yeah, no, and again, you're absolutely not wrong. At this point in time, though, for us, it's really about the reflux. Everything else, she takes the bottle well, right. And as far as like anti-colic, she's still colicky. But as far as what we're trying to look for is what helps with the gas, what makes her spit up less, the reflux itself. So if that helps, great. We've done it one time. We don't have enough data to say that it does or doesn't. I'm giving you crap.
Bottom line is, if the Dr. Browns would have worked, you would have kept using them, because you must
correct. And we still do from time to time.
Baby that's not spitting up.
Yeah. But Brandon, let's get into today's topic. Today's topic, like we said, is milestones. The first thing I guess that I'll say is we're going to go over kind of what are the milestones according to agencies such as the CDC or different organizations that are out there. But the big thing is milestones can be very stressful as a parent or as a dad. You know, it's something that's important. Don't get me wrong. You want your kid to be developing at the pace they're supposed to, if not ahead of the time. There's a pride thing to it. There's a worrisome thing to it. But you also have to take everything with a grain of salt. Sometimes, just because your baby's supposed to do something at 3 months and they do it at 3.5 months, doesn't mean anything's wrong with the baby. Or if they do it a half month early, doesn't mean your baby's going to grow up to be a genius, you know? So you got to take everything with a grain of salt. The reason why we're talking about it today is, one, just to educate people so you kind of know what is expected, but also to talk about the fact that, hey, you know, what is normal, what isn't normal, when should you be concerned? So, Brandon, I'll kind of let you kick it off because I know you have some good data that we talked about a little bit before this episode.
So, one, I don't know about you. I was shocked. I feel like with everything going on with COVID and all that, I've heard more about the CDC in the last 2 years, and kind of you get an idea of what they do more than any other time in my life. I had no idea when we were looking up research for this show, and as I'm talking to my wife, she already has an app that I'm going to talk to you guys about, that the CDC literally has a guide for child development and for milestones. It kind of we think about the CDC a little bit different probably right now, but that's something that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, I found that out this week. So I was the same exact as you.
It's crazy.
And it was like the first thing that popped up when I was doing research. Yeah. And I'm like, I had no idea they were involved in this. And like you said, you think CDC right now, you think, you know, COVID. Yep. But they do a lot of stuff and they have a lot of credibility, so it's a good source. And you know, like we said, we both did research on them for this episode itself.
And this, I mean, so the first thing I would do, as you're listening to us or after the episode's over, just look up the CDC developmental milestones chart. They have a website dedicated to it, but there also is a downloadable PDF that is very, very, very detailed. And I mean, these milestones, they break down and go all the way up to 5 years. But the first 2 years of a baby's life are broken down: 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year, 15 months, 18 months. So they're really giving you in-depth information from a what you should expect every couple months standpoint. The other thing that helped us was an Instagram page that my wife actually recommended I look at. It's milestones.and.motherhood. So that's milestones.and.motherhood. And this is a pediatric physical therapist that really kind of, breaks down one what the CDC is recommending, but also from a medical standpoint, what they look at as physical therapists. If someone is bringing them a child who maybe isn't developing at the same rate that they're quote unquote supposed to be. So quickly, one thing that I wanted to mention, the CDC's milestones actually have changed very recently. So previously, their milestones in the first year were based on the average child, or 50% of children's in the study, or child's in the study, hitting these checkpoints. They've changed it now to where they're making these recommendations based on 75% of children displaying the said skill. So those skills are in the first few months. We can go over these individually. We can kind of go over them all together, but I'll do a quick little overview. So rolls tummy to back was previously looked at as a 3 to 5 month skill, and now their new recommendation or suggestion is 6 months. So I know for us, and I know actually you just posted something on Dad Jokes Instagram page about how great Peyton's doing with that. Bryce initially showed early signs of rolling over, and his legs have always been strong, or seem strong to us. We don't have really a reference point. But he's done the tummy to back a few times, but at this stage in the game, that is something that's was causing us a little bit of anxiety. Like, hey, this kid should be rolling over from stomach to back like every time now, based on what we're reading. How's Peyton doing with that?
So she's doing good. It's funny because, again, you talk about milestones and you read different articles, and in my head, I don't know why. I don't even remember if I just heard it or read it, but I'm thinking she's supposed to be doing this by 3 months. Like, that's what I had in my head for whatever reason, which, like you said,
it was 3 to 5 months.
Yeah, now it's kind of changed to 6 months, and a lot of things are out there that say 6 months. But about a few weeks ago, so about 2.5 months, she did it, and then she kind of was doing it all the time, and she's been doing it all the time. Just today, I put her on her mat on her stomach, and it was the first time in a long time where she didn't. She was on her stomach for probably 10, 15 minutes and didn't roll over once. But she's been doing really, really well with it. She can go stomach to back, both sides, but she definitely can't do stomach or back to stomach yet. So she's doing good, and it sounds like, she's a little bit of ahead of the curve on that point. I don't know if it has anything to do with the fact that she's kind of smaller, so it's easier for her. I don't know. She's always been very, very active with her feet and her legs, so I think that some of that might have to do with that. But she's doing good. And like I said, the one thing that I don't know is I don't think she's doing it intentionally. I don't know if she's supposed to be doing it intentionally, but she just kind of does it. I don't know that there's intention. Like, she's like, hey, I want to get to my back. I think she's just kind of moving and then rolls to her back. So we'll see if that kind of changes as time goes.
What's crazy to me is I genuinely feel like Bryce isn't doing it almost because he doesn't feel like it. I don't know, but I would be willing to bet money at this point that he will consistently be rolling back to stomach before he's consistently rolling stomach to back, because he's right there on the back to stomach. He'll get to his side and he can't figure out how to tuck his arm, and other than that, he's pretty much, now maybe that's normal. I'm once again, have no comparison really. But that's just something that we've noticed, and you can throw him on his stomach and he's sitting there chilling until he's just annoyed with it, and it's not really effort. So we've started some exercises that my wife has looked up that we work with them on, just to see if that helps. But this is a good time to bring up. So this is something that we actually, like, between the two of us had conversations like, hey, he should be doing this at this point. A lot of stuff initially I looked up said 3 to 5 months. So we've been, first when he did it, he was right in line with where he was supposed to be. He proved that he could do it, but then it was like, you almost feel like this should continue to happen. Mm-hmm. Obviously, research that we just went over shows that we aren't at the point that is concerning. But one thing that in my research has come up is that they say, I'm saying this particular physical therapist's recommendation, once you are at the point of what the CDC recommends, waiting 2 months to see if through exercises that you can work with your child, if that affects anything, and then at that point reaching out to your doctor, because what you don't want to do is wait too long if something is going on that someone professionally can help your child out with. So it's kind of going, you're trying to figure out what the best timing for it is, and for everyone that might be different. Once again, I'm not a doctor, she is, but that is something to keep in mind. And for me, that gave me a little bit of peace of mind as far as what the game plan should be going forward.
For sure, yeah. And you got to have a plan just in case it does come up. And again, if he's hitting other milestones, is it less of a concern? These are all questions that you'll have to ask. Brandon, a few milestones I'll go over a little bit before even when you hit the rollover stage. Things that, if you're kind of in the early stages or still pregnant, what they tell you is that by 1 month or around the 1 month time, that's when they can start to respond to sound, babies. So you should start be able to see their heads move to sound. 2 months is when they should start to be able to lift their head up. Now, it doesn't mean that they can do it all the time or with no support, but they can lift their head up kind of without you having to hold it every single time. You can also start doing tummy time. And then 3 months is when they can start to make eye contact, follow you, mimic sounds, and kind of do the babbling along with grasping your hands like babies will do, like intentionally, not just like where you like make them grab your hand. So that's kind of the first 3 months, some milestones that they tell you about. I don't know if you kind of want to do ones from 3 to 6 months, Brandon, that are kind of
we'll definitely touch on it. And the cool thing is the CDC list goes over these in details, and it's actually a literal checklist that you can go over so you're ready for things to happen with your pediatrician or any questions that you may have. I think the interesting thing with me and you both, I think both of our kids were like holding their necks up from birth pretty much. It was kind of it was kind of crazy to see how both of them reacted there. So at 4 months, a few things that they recommend are making, not recommend, but things to look out for, like making sounds like ooh and ah and cooing. Making sounds back when you talk to him or her, and then turning your head to the sound of your voice, kind of like Jerry mentioned. That's in like that 3 to 4 month range. Once you're heading towards 6 months, things to look out for, recognizing faces, and sometimes, and I'm not necessarily I'm not looking forward to this, but I know it may be coming. There's a something that comes into play at 6 months where your child doesn't, if they don't recognize a face, they may get uncomfortable around the individual. So in the beginning, Bryce has met a lot of different people so far in his life and has reacted well to everyone. I'm interested to see if that changes in the coming months. Other things to pay attention to: rolling from tummy to back, we mentioned already. Pushes your arms out straight when you're on your stomach. And supporting themselves when they're sitting. These things are getting ready for kind of the next big milestone, which is sitting without support. And that's one of the things that the CDC previously recommended or observed as a 6 month checkpoint, and that's turned into a 9 month thing, which is, this is kind of the point of this episode. Some kids move at different paces. I would say Bryce might be a week away from sitting on his own. Like, he can sit on his own right now for a period of time, maybe like a few minutes, and then he'll start to wobble. But he's right there. That's part of the reason that we actually started feeding him, because that was one thing we were waiting on, and he's able to do that now. So he's at the 9 month stage according to this list when it comes to sitting up potentially, but still isn't consistently rolling over from tummy to back, which, I mean, every kid is going to be different.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon, but I do believe that sitting up is closely followed by crawling. Those are kind of in the same time frame, which is crazy if you think about it. You can sit up and you're like, oh, that's one thing. But crawling, I mean, that's a game changer as a parent. Mm-hmm. Once they start crawling, I mean, you got to have everything baby-proofed. You got to be constantly watching them. You got to have areas to put them, keep stuff away from them. So that's a game changer. But usually, depending on what list you look at, around 9 months is when babies start to crawl, typically. Is that kind of what you found in your research?
Yeah, actually, in the new recommendations, the CDC took crawling off the list. It previously was at 8 to 10 months. but they've kind of grouped it in with a lot of the other. So you're looking at 6 months to a year in everything that I've seen. But previously they were at 8 to 10 months. So, I mean, I'm really not going to be shocked if he's crawling before he's consistent. I think he's it's like an intentional thing. Let me not say intentional. I don't think he's consciously like
he just doesn't care to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, and that's the funny thing. And again, like I said, if they're meeting other milestones, maybe that one doesn't matter as much. That's something you got to talk to your pediatrician about.
Exactly.
But they might just say, yeah, it's not a development thing. He just, for whatever reason, doesn't like it. But yeah, like I said, crawling, that's kind of around that 9-month mark. And then also, that's an interesting time because you got sitting up, crawling, and you also have first words come in right around that time frame, mama, dada, things like that. So that's going to be exciting. You guys aren't too far off from that.
Life is coming at you fast now.
Yeah, that's crazy. So those are all before 1 year, typically. And so you're thinking right around the 9-month mark, you're going to get, your life's going to be very hugely impacted if you have a baby because you're going to have them talking, crawling, sitting up, maybe rolling over, all these things kind of around that time. And then obviously once you get past those, there's some other big ones, Brandon, once you get closer to a year. I'll kind of let you go over those. Yeah,
so at a year you're looking at, before we get there, one thing at 9 months that jumped out at me that I wasn't looking out for is they recommend you have a developmental screening with your pediatrician at the 9-month frame. So that's going to be some testing. I'm not saying testing, like literal, like you're answering questions with the pediatrician. But they're looking over your child from a developmental standpoint. So that'll be the first kind of milestone you hit with the pediatrician, other than bringing up concerns and things like that you have with them. But once you're looking at a year, you're looking at a kid that the CDC is saying at 12 months, this is the new standard. You should be able to stand them up, basically pull the stand and support them, and they can stand in place. And then you know what's coming next, Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after you start standing, you're walking, and that goes from like the 12 month to 18 months. So they give you a pretty large amount of time, and part of this I think is them. They're extending this time frame out. I do think it's better from a mental standpoint for the parent, because if that time frame was 12 months, which it was before, it's 12 to 15 months, and I got a kid at 15 months who isn't walking, and I'm looking at this, and it's really normal that they're not if you look at the grand scheme of things, but now I'm freaking out and talking to my pediatrician. So that's something that's definitely beneficial.
It's funny, you mentioned standing kind of at 1 year, and that's one of the things that have kind of amazed me the most about Peyton. And I think it's perfectly normal, but I didn't really realize it because I wasn't around newborns, or at least holding them all the time. I mean, it would hold them, but usually it was just holding them while they slept. But she, from a very young age, can stand for long periods of time with me holding her. She has some super strong legs and will stand there. Obviously she's not standing, like she doesn't have the balance, but she could stand up for, I don't know, probably a minute easy and not be weak in the legs. She just doesn't have the balance forward and backwards. But if I kind of put my hands around her hips, she can do it. And that kind of amazed me. So it's funny that she could do that so young, but they can't really stand completely until right around the 1 year mark.
One of my favorite things that Kelsey, my wife, does with Bryce, and this is literally is all day, every day, but she'll have him by his arms. He's standing up on her legs or body somewhere, and she looks at him. She says, "You got bones? You got bones today?" Because that's basically her way of saying you're standing up, you're standing strong. And then when he plops down, eventually he doesn't have bones anymore. All the bones went away. So if you ever hear Kelsey saying you got bones to Bryce, it's because he's standing straight up on her somewhere.
Well, you know what I like to do, Brandon? Did you ever watch the movie Dirty Dancing? Because your sister made you watch it. Well, there's a scene in there, very famous scene. Patrick Swayze lifts the girl over his head, and she kind of like sprawls out, legs out.
I've seen.
You've seen the scene. Well, Peyton, when she's upset, gets really tight, and she straightens her legs, straightens her arms, and so I'll lift her over my head like it's the Patrick Swayze scene, because that's how she gets. And I'm like, hey, we're doing Dirty Dancing right now, because if you're gonna be upset, at least she's got perfect form. I mean, she's got perfect form when she's upset like that.
I hope you guys are getting this on video.
I don't know if Macy has or hasn't, but she probably should because she does have really good form when she's upset like that. So we're getting some positives out of the negatives there.
That's perfect. And then, honestly, with all this, I think is do your own research. Look at these lists. If you have concerns, consult with your pediatrician. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. You're not a doctor. But it's something that can cause some anxiety if you're looking at, man, you just want the best for your child. You're looking at a list that's telling you they need to be doing this and they're not. There might not be anything wrong with you or the child. It's something that it might take a little bit of patience, some work on your end as a dad or as a mom to try to get them to the point that ultimately they need to. But everybody grows at different paces.
Yeah, and Brandon, I think like most things as a parent, it's about balance. So you don't want to bury your head in the sand and not pay attention to milestones because some of the things actually matter. And sometimes there's things you can actually do to help your kid progress. So if you're not paying attention to it or pretending like, oh, they'll do it when they do it, you might be actually hurting your kid. But you also don't want to obsess over it to the point where you're stressed out and you're not able to like just enjoy being a parent, or you're making the kid not, advance or develop in other areas because you're so stressed about the one milestone. So I guess it's knowing what the milestones are, knowing where your kid should be, knowing some activities you can do to help them get there, and then just if there is concerns or things aren't going the way that you want them to go, talk to your pediatrician. That's when you get them involved. Let them tell you, because they'll tell you, hey, you should be concerned, or no, you really shouldn't be concerned. But I guess, milestones are important, but they're not the only thing in the world. We talk about Peyton, she's doing great with rolling over, but as far as like where she's at on the chart, those milestones, she's doing not great. She's third percentile. So it's give and take. There's going to be things that are good and things are going to be bad. You just got to take everything kind of in stride and not freak out too much, because trust me, there's always something new to freak out about as a dad. We've learned that, as we were just talking about. There's always going to be something new to freak out about. So milestones are cool. Some of them are exciting. Some of them are fun. Some of them are stressful. But, that's parenthood. So just going through it. The rolling over one has been kind of good for us. It's like I said, but even like you said, she's been doing it, and then today she didn't, and all of a sudden I was stressed out. And I'm like, why am I stressed out? She's done it for like 2 weeks straight. She didn't do it one time while she was screaming her head off, so she was probably just mad and like, I'm not going to do it to spite you, Dad. But, that's how it is. It's just funny that way.
It's funny, these thoughts that we are putting in our kids' head. Like, she's doing something to spite you. Bryce is doing something exactly. He doesn't feel like it. Like these kids think just like we do. Exactly. In our heads, they do.
That's funny.
I mean, the cool thing about all this is how we're literally like the development that you see in such a short amount of time is like, it's crazy. And every day it seems like something new is coming where, oh, he hasn't done that before, or he hasn't seen that before. And I mean, this is the best part about being a dad. It's like it's almost like you're experiencing the world again just through someone else's eyes.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And in the first, it's funny because these are both our first kids, but for people that have multiple kids, there's probably pros and cons to that as well. Sometimes, you've gone through it before, so maybe there's less stress on that front. But also, let's say you had a kid and they did really well with certain milestones, and then your second one isn't. I mean, it could be more stressful. So, just because you have a kid doesn't necessarily mean you don't have the same type of issues. You got to take every kid its own individual. It's different being, they're going to grow at their own rate. So that'll be something that I know as we have more kids, we'll have to keep in mind too. Just because, Peyton rolled over at 2.5 months. My next kid, it might be like Bryce where he doesn't want to or she doesn't want to. So, keeping that in mind is also important. So if you have multiple kids out there and maybe this one's struggling or this one's doing great and the other one struggled, that's okay too. They're all different. They don't know that their brother or sister did it at a certain point. Exactly. It's not going to change the fact that they did or didn't. So you got to treat them all individually.
I mean, it could be like my little brother and never grow.
Yeah.
Dude's like 5'5". He's going to kill me. I think he's 5'7" technically. So
5'6.5" we'll give him.
Yeah, we'll give him that.
It's okay, Jay. He's got more hair.
Yeah. He does.
I like it. All right, Brandon. Let's hear this dad joke. Let's see if I can guess it. You guessed mine, so I got a lot of pressure on me.
Guess this. I'm gonna give you a second to guess.
This will be a milestone today if we both guess.
Hey, that's pretty good. Jerry, what did 50 Cent do when he was hungry?
50 Cent do when he was hungry?
What did 50 Cent do when he was hungry?
Buy something for 50 cents. I don't know.
Close. 58.
Oh, nice.
58.
58. I
Which
like
is,
it.
I saw that joke and it was perfect because it was right around. People were giving him crap about the Super Bowl and hanging upside down. The guy's in better shape than I am, so I can't say anything. But I would not have been hanging upside down and let all that blood rush to my face.
I just want to know how long he was doing it for. That was my concern.
I don't know, bro.
Like, he looked like he'd been there for a minute.
It didn't look good.
It was kind of funny. We were watching it together, and I was like, "How long's he been hanging like that? He's gonna be sing."
I didn't know who it was at first, and I know 50 well.
Oh, that's funny.
No idea who that was, but good job, Curtis.
I like it, Curtis. 50 Cent Jackson, nice. Well, Brandon, it's a good episode. Like we said, don't freak out too much about Milestones, but do the research. That app you mentioned is a good app. I have it on my phone as well. But if you haven't already, please tell your friends about us. Like us on Facebook. Like us on Instagram. Send us some messages. Send us some topics if you want us to talk about certain things. We appreciate each and every comment that we get. I know we're coming up on another milestone episode, Brandon. It'll be our 30th episode coming up soon, which we're going to do another top 10. So I'm excited for that coming around the bend.
30 episodes. That's crazy.
It is crazy. We've been doing this over half a year now, and like I said, it just keeps getting better yet. So we appreciate each and every one of you out there. If you haven't already, go grab a beer, go grab a glass of wine, and relax for the rest of the evening. Or if it's the beginning of the day, hopefully the day at work's not too bad. But for Brandon, I'm Jerry, and you've been listening to Dad Jokes.